Got my tea. Top start. Well, here we are. Oh my god, he's done a podcast. Why do a podcast? In fact, welcome to episode 1 of Tent Talks, a podcast hosted by me, Ryan Hunter, aka the Yorkshire Lad Outdoors, on YouTube and Instagram. Go check me out, give me a follow, give me a thumbs up, all that shit. But yeah, now podcaster. Another string to Hunter's bow. Podcasts. Why do a podcast, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One, because I want to. I like it. It's a creative outlet. I've wanted to do one for a while. And 2, I am a huge enthusiast of the great outdoors, a huge enthusiast around wild camping, about hiking and getting out into nature and sorting the old noggin out and clearing my head, and it's just done wonders for me. And I don't think there's a podcast out there that speaks to that at the minute. I listen to some other nature podcasts. There's Paul Kirtley podcast, which is phenomenal, and he speaks to some really inspirational people who've done really inspirational stuff, like they've canoed fucking length of the world, and they've, I don't know, fucking camels in the Sahara Desert and stuff. I ain't done any of that shit, so I don't expect to get inspired by any of my trips. But what I have done is I have taken steps to improve my mental health, and the great outdoors has been one of them. So, and I know from watching YouTube, I'm also a big enthusiast about YouTube, that there's a lot of people out there as well who are in the same boat, and it does wonders for them. So this is a podcast for you guys. And so I'm just going to talk to you. Episode 1 is just about me. Just little old me. Little old Ryan sat in his... It's not a YouTube studio, it's my daughter's bedroom. But I'm sat in here, I'm talking to you with a cup of Yorkshire tea, and just going to tell you about my foray into wild camping, how I got into it, why I got into it, stop wild camping, touch wood, and how it has kind of changed the way I think about things and how I approach. I'm going to over-egg it here, how I approach my life. It's done wonders for me. So I'm going to talk to you about that, and then I've also got some phenomenal guests lined up for this podcast, and that's what I want it to be. I want this to be a two-way conversation. I don't want it to be all about me just talking to you guys into a camera. I want, for the people watching on YouTube, I'm talking into a camera. From people listening on Spotify, I'm still talking into a camera, but it won't really mean out to you. But I've got some great guests lined up who are going to come on, some quite prominent people on YouTube in the wild camping scene in the UK, to talk to me about why, I suppose, and why they get into camping, what they love about it, and kind of what it does for them, and why they continue to do it. And one of them has been lucky enough, well, no, he's not lucky. One of them has followed his passions, and he's made this his full-time career, which is just exceptionally inspiring from my point of view. He's gone after his passion in life, what gives him the most joy and the most excitement, and he's turned it into a full-time career. So I can't wait to have a conversation with that gentleman, and a few others as well who've got some phenomenal backstories and are just like-minded individuals. And that's what I want to do this podcast for. That's why I set my YouTube channel up. It was to meet like-minded people, hopefully inspire a few people to get outside into the outdoors and go camping. And also there's a lot of people who can't do it. I've seen a couple of comments on my videos, but also I've seen people's comments on other people's videos of people who would just love to do it, but unfortunately because of physical physical constraints, they just can't do it. So watching the videos of people doing it, they kind of living their lives vicariously through them, and it really inspires them. And some people feel like they're up in the hills or in the woods by watching those videos. So this podcast for you as well. If it brings you any joy, phenomenal. If it doesn't, switch it off, I suppose. So yeah. So my journey into wild camping, how did it start? Well, lockdown, obviously. It fried my head. it fried a lot of people's heads, but it really kind of fucking messed with my head. I'm not. The irony is I'm not very good being on my own unless it's voluntary solitude, which I'll get into, which is why wild camping means so much to me. But yeah, during the first lockdown, I was watching videos on landscape photography on YouTube because I'm quite big into my photography, and I was looking for some inspiring locations to go out with my camera during lockdown. And some of YouTuber I was watching, a guy called Gareth Danks, a phenomenal landscape photographer and street photographer, was in one of his videos. He was wild camping, and I was like, "What's that? I've never seen that before." What do you mean he puts a tent on the top of a mountain? And I watched his thing, and I looked at the price I looked at his tent, and I thought, "Fucking hell, people pay £600 for a tent." But I got hooked, and I googled it. Well, YouTube more wild camping, and you come across some of the videos from like Paul Mesner, and Ash Outdoors was another channel, and some of the Americans, and people like Andrew Beavers, Andy Wardle, just normal, regular blokes just getting out and exploring the wild and pitching a tent up on the top of fells and having a beer, watching the sunset. And I thought, that's a bit of me that I fancy getting into that. So during lockdown, I think where we all made fucking stupid purchases and impulse purchases, I took myself to go outdoors and basically said to the lass, give me the wild camping 101 kit. So I've sorted myself out with an OEX bag, an OEX sleeping bag, an OEX pillow. You see where this is going? There's a lot of OEX stuff. Sleeping mat. I got a Berghaus Grampian tent, which is, I'm using it this weekend when me and my girlfriend go camping. It's a beast, but it weighs 4.5 kilograms. So it wasn't a lightweight tent by any stretch of the imagination, but it was it did me for my first one. I didn't want to go overboard with spending all my money in case I didn't take to it, but looking back now, there was no risk of me not liking this. It was just absolutely phenomenal. So I reached out to a couple of people via Instagram, one being Andy Beavers, and just said, "Look, listen, Paul, it's something I fancy doing. Can you recommend me a couple of spots?" And I messaged another couple of people as well, and kind of they all said, like a lot of people just said Angletan's a phenomenal spot to camp at. So I just one morning decided that were it and packed the car, took myself off to the Lake District and parked up in Patterdale and started walking up towards Angletown. And I loaded my backpack with fucking way too much stuff. I must have weighed over 20 kilograms for an overnighter. I think I had that tent at 4.5 kilogram, sleeping bag. I had more clothes than I needed. I had tins of ale to drink, more food. I don't know how long I thought I was going for, but I'd way overloaded my bag. And it was hard going, getting up. There's walking up hills and there's walking up hills with heavy backpacks on, and that was just that was an experience in itself. But I was hooked from the minute I started. Then I got high enough that I was hooked from the minute I got high enough to see the views, and I just loved it. And then walking over and seeing Angletown and just thinking, fucking hell, I'd never seen anything like it. It was stunning. It was still. It was just grand. I was like, how is this in the middle of how is this on a mountain? And I just loved it. I got there, I set my tent up, the first time I'd ever done it. And the sense of achievement I got from pitching a tent was just the self-gratification of you've done something so out of your comfort zone, so new to me. And I felt so proud, and I just pitched the tent. I opened a can of ale, I sat down and I looked at the tarn, and I nearly cried because my mind felt quiet, which was the first time in a long time that my mind felt quiet. It'd been so busy with everything that was going on during lockdown. I had stuff going on in my personal life. Work was a issue because of lockdown and the threat to jobs and stuff, and it was just none of it mattered when I got sat in that tent, just none of it mattered anymore. I was just sat there in the middle of the hills, and I just thought, my problems and everything else is so insignificant compared to this kind of grandeur and where we sit in the cosmos. And I just thought, I felt so small, but my mind felt so quiet. And I walked up to the hill, I watched the sunset. I didn't sleep much because the wind picked up in the night, but I woke up I was clagged in. Just the adventure of packing away the tent in the pissing down rain and getting back down to the car. Everything was just absolutely phenomenal. And from that, I was just hooked. I went 3 days after back up to the lakes, and I've been going ever since. And it's just been an absolute game changer. It is my counselling, it's my therapy, it's how I clear my head, and documenting my journeys along the way through my YouTube channel and through Instagram has also been a real, what would I call it? It's like I've got someone up there with me talking to a camera, as weird as it sounds. But it's like I've got someone to talk to and someone to offload to, and then to share that online with effectively strangers. I mean, I've only got not even up to 500 subscribers, but to share it with strangers and with anyone who can view it, again, it's almost a vulnerability to say, this is me and I'm out of my comfort zone. But it's just, you meet some phenomenal people. I've met some lovely people virtually that I've not met in person. I'm a photographer as well. I'm a wedding photographer, and I'm doing someone's wedding that I've met on YouTube this summer, and just met some great people. And as I say, I've got a few people lined up already to come on here and talk to me about their journey. And so for anyone who watches kind of YouTube, you'll know some of the names who are going to be coming on here and talking to me about why they do what they do. So yeah, and that was it. That was how I got into it. And just the solitude is just, I've never felt anything like it. The weird thing is, this is weird as well, hang on, a cup of tea. The weird thing is that during COVID, and during the first lockdown was when my head melted, because that I felt imprisoned in my own house. I felt trapped, and I just thought, I can't be alone. I don't want to be alone. I just wanted to be around people, whatever. I just wanted to be around people and in busy environments. I just craved human to human contact. But then, weirdly, getting up in the hills, all I want to do is find solitude and be as far away from people as possible. And what I kind of discovered is there's a stark difference between solitude and loneliness. And I think solitude is kind of being fully at peace with yourself and your thoughts, and loneliness is kind of the opposite. It's being afraid. It's afraid of being with your own thoughts, and loneliness is a feeling that you're missing out and that you feel there's no hope. I think is with loneliness, and solitude is very different. And I could feel very lonely in the busiest places. I've discovered I could be around people, and that's probably sometimes where I felt my loneliest, because they didn't know what I was going through at the time, and they didn't understand my struggle, and it wasn't their fault. It's because I didn't talk to them about it. But it is a very lonely place to be when you're stuck with your own thoughts. And I think when you get out into the hills and look at nature and everything around you, and the noise, the external noises stop, it lets you listen to yourself and your own head, and you kind of can just be. And that's what I've discovered through camping, and that feeling of being is just something I always experience when I'm out. And although I document everything through my camera and for YouTube, I still make sure I take the time to appreciate the settings that I'm in, and appreciate the views, and appreciate everything that I have in my life, and not take anything for granted. And I only get that mental clarity when I'm in the hills. I'm trying to bring that into my everyday life. I'm trying to be more present in in all situations and find kind of inner peace, I suppose. But at the minute, the hills, getting out into the lakes, I'm very fortunate that I'm only an hour away from the Yorkshire Dales. I'm an hour away from the Peak District. Although I've not camped in the Peaks yet, so that's on my list. And a couple of hours from the lakes, so everywhere is accessible, and I'm making sure that I make the most of it when I get time to myself to go do that. So that is why I got into wild camping, and we're going to talk about some serious topics on this podcast from the tent or virtual tent, wherever I am, around mental health, about judgment, about letting go, about anxiety, about depression, about the stigmas that come with mental health. And especially for blokes, the stigma is getting smaller, but there's still a stigma there, and we can break through it if we just talk to each other. And that's what this podcast is. It's a couple of mates talking over a pot of tea or a beer and just spitting the shit and just talking things through, because a problem halved, what is it? A problem shared is a problem halved. Or something like that. Yeah. And I want meaningful conversation, but but it's going to be informal. It's going to be funny at times. And dare I say, it might get a bit deep, but fuck it. That's like, we've got to get deep at times. We are complex individuals, but life doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple. We've just got to be. That's it. Appreciate what we've got. Don't take anything for granted. We're so fucking lucky that we exist. My hero, Ricky Gervais, said it. He says, we're on a rock travelling around 1 of 100 billion stars. Our species is 1 of over 500 million that have ever existed. Our chances of being born are about 1 in 400 trillion. You're not special, but you are fucking lucky. Enjoy your amazing life. You'll never exist again. And that quote is absolutely bang on. We'll never exist again. We'll never get another go at this. So make sure we enjoy it. So for all you wild campers, all you hikers, for all you outdoors people, this podcast is for you. It's for us to talk about our experiences and for us to share and build a community. And I'm excited. So until the next one, thank you for listening to Tent Talks, episode 1. And I'll see you on the next one.